This meeting is now being recorded. I miss hearing that sound. Good afternoon, it's Brian and Brandi with Connecting Communities and more. Special guest today, Mr. James Solon. James, how are you?
I'm well, Brian. How are you?
I am well. So as we started this, we realized that we're not sure if Brandi and James have actually met one another. So Brandi, meet James, not Jimmy, not Jim, but James. No, you can call him Jim. It's okay. I just do the formal name with everybody for whatever reason. And then James, meet Brandi, who is our concierge. I love saying that word. It's such a, I don't know. I just like the word.
Is that the correct pronunciation?
Yeah.
Hi,
Yeah.
James. How are you?
I'm fine. Nice to meet you.
Likewise. I think we may have met already, but if not, nice meeting you.
There
again.
it is. See, we are bringing communities together. Brandi, who is in Perrysburg, I guess that's the same community. And are you in Toledo or Maumee, James?
Almost Sylvania. I'm right on the border, Toledo, Sylvania. So.
Oh, gotcha. I'm right on the border of Maumee, and so I could literally throw a stone to my my driveway, and I'd be in Maumee. So,
Right.
so big news this week. As I was, let me just tell you, this is a hot mess. As I was signing on, I got an email. Apparently, school has been pushed back. So Sylvania is now officially, as of 2 minutes ago, not starting until the 31st of July.
Wow. Of August.
That's not true. Of August. Sorry. Of August.
Wow. Okay.
We're scheduled for the 18th. What about Perrysburg, Brandi? When are you ready?
So we're scheduled for somewhere around the 20th. We have applied to keep Paxton home for the year. And so that way he doesn't go to school this year, but he would return for 2021.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think around the 20th is when we're scheduled to go back.
Got it. You know, it's tough. Not to get too much on subject, but my son's mother, my former wife, and I are on different sides. So I was very, let's go back to school. Like, we're okay, we'll do it. And I said in this town hall meeting, and I flipped. Like, once I started listening to them and really dove in, and I'm like, long story short, we are on opposite sides.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's a tough times that we are in.
Sure.
As a whole. So, but we will get into that because we have a whole topic on that piece. But I want to talk about you, James. So you were in Florida when this started.
I was.
Back in March.
Correct.
What was different in Florida, and then when you came to Ohio, was there like a mentality difference between the two states?
I don't know. It's kind of hard to say because we're kind of doing the same things in Toledo when we got back to Toledo that we were in Florida. So basically we were in the beach community, so they shut down the St. Patrick's Day. They, like, after 5, they cleared everybody out of the bars and shut the bars and restaurants down.
Oh,
And
wow.
then roughly that same week they shut the beaches down. So we were down there for 2 or 3 weeks after that. And it was pretty desolate where we were at, but comfortable. You know, there wasn't a lot of shenanigans going on. It was, you could feel some tension in the grocery store and that kind of thing, but all in all, I don't think it was much different once we got back here. Maybe less people out when we were down there, and that might be because more of it was a vacation area, and a lot of those people either didn't come to town or left early. So
Yeah, I went to Pennsylvania in June, and I will tell you that they took this much more serious than Ohio.
is that right?
Yes, they were much more serious. Where we were, shopping and doing all of this, they had shut down. People were not going in the stores without masks. I mean, so I was somewhat pleased of their seriousness of that piece. So coming back here, has this affected your business? Well, first off, why don't we tell these lovely folks, what do you do?
Well, I've got a couple businesses, but a business that we're trying to expand is a home inspection business for real estate transfers. So if you are in the market to purchase a home, generally you'll have it inspected before you have the bank approve the finances, and that gives you a negotiating tool with your realtor and the buyer as to maybe some adjustments in the price and or these items to be repaired or replaced. So necessary tool in my opinion. And then I'm a contractor too. I do remodeling and those kinds of things. So that's been a staple for years, and like to transition from that to the home inspection, make that the primary source. But we're not quite there yet on that end. But
yeah, I mean, it's a process at the end of the day. Now, are we in the home buying process? I mean, Brandi, have you ever had a home inspection done?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What were some of the reasons why you feel a home inspection is needed?
Oh, I don't buy a house without a home inspection.
Right? It's just like peace of mind at the end of the day. I couldn't imagine why people wouldn't want it. Now, the buyer pays for it, though. Am I correct? Isn't that part of the buyer piece?
generally, but you know,
Yeah.
sometimes I've been in instances where sometimes it'll be a sticky situation, and the realtor will pay for it, or both realtors will split the cost. But generally speaking, yes, it's the buyer who pays for the inspection.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what are some things when you walk into a house as an inspector, Jim, that you can go, oh no, let me jot this down. What are some red flags walking into a home that you are going to say, this is going to take a lengthy inspection?
Well, I guess generally speaking, an inspection is a visual inspection. So everything is visual first, and then that kind of gives you a suspicion to look elsewhere as to what you're seeing or what. But a couple examples, I guess, would be cracks in the ceiling, the corners. Another red flag would be a floor that has a noticeable slope to it as you walk across it.
Do you take marbles out and throw them on the ground and see if they roll?
No, but I guess that would be an option. Those would be some severe cases. And then you're looking for water stains. That usually, gives you red flags like, well, is this an old problem or is this a previous problem, current problem? And then you start, from there you check for moisture and see if these areas are wet. And then if you have access from one side of it, you go and look and see if, say there's a pipe that's got a drip in it, or frozen broke, or those kinds of things. And then you're looking for, I guess another one would be like, say there's an outlet and it's got like a scorch mark on it or a burn on it. First thing would be, yeah, you're going to check, see if you got power there, and then you're going to go from there. So those are some things. And then there's kind of a gray line. A home inspection is not a code inspection, but in the same breath, there are some things in terms of code that need to be pointed out, especially if it's what we refer to as a health and safety issue. So in other words, somebody could get hurt if it isn't corrected. And railings are a big one, whether it's an interior staircase or a deck, especially if it's an elevated deck of a certain height, or porch. You got a loose railing or something there, somebody can get hurt if that breaks. Even overhead service for your electric, there's certain height requirements there. If that's too low, or if there's some things that it can come in contact with. Had an instance once where they were bringing that into the house, and they had an airing deck off the back, and you could literally, from the airing deck, reach over and if you wanted to hold on to that line, and that would kill somebody pretty quickly. So those kinds of things.
Not a good thing.
No.
Is there anything that when you walk in the house that you can, let me rephrase the statement. Are there any best bets as the person that is getting the home inspection to make it as easy as possible for you?
make it easy for me to inspect, or
Yeah.
I'm not sure from the buyer's perspective or the seller's perspective.
From either or, any best bets that you should kind of have your house ready to sell. So when you're looking to sell, maybe these are some things that you want to have situated.
I guess from an inspection standpoint, the big things are the mechanical systems, the heating, the air conditioning, the roof, hot water, whether that's gas or electric or boiler. Those are the things that are going to really be painful if a buyer moves in and doesn't know that the condition is worth a darn, and then they have thousands of dollars of repairs, and then they're just going to be angry with everyone. So what I like to see, and from an inspector's perspective, if you had your local heating and air guy come out and service your air conditioner and your furnace, it's got a clean filter in it. They've gone in and cleaned it. They've ran it. They've tested it. And generally speaking, there's a sticker on there and it's got a date on it when they serviced it. So at least then there's an indication that, there's been some maintenance and it's been gone through. When you get a unit that's, 10 years or older and there's no sticker on it and it's full of the filter, you can't, it's as dark as your beard and cobwebs and everything else, you got to think, all right, here's an item then that would be a recommendation right away to the buyer. Have this evaluated by a professional and go from there. So that would be a good example. Hot water tank. A lot of times you'll see rust, especially down around the bottom. That's an indication that the life it's at its end of its life and it's not long. So, and then usually these appliances all have date codes on them when they were manufactured. That doesn't necessarily mean that they've been in operation for the same length of time, but it's a good indicator, generally speaking, of how old something is. And then
Have you thought about possibly adding a service? So maybe instead of like home buying or selling inspections, you do a update inspection, right? Maybe twice a year you come out, and I'm just throwing numbers out. Maybe it's a residual, right? $35-$40 a visit, and they come out twice a year to make sure that there's no leaks. I mean, I know for myself, first off, I don't know anything about anything, so to have that peace of mind would be amazing. But I can imagine someone like Brandi and her husband that are probably extremely educated in that piece. It's a timing issue, right? I'm going to do it this weekend. Well, this weekend other stuff happens. That might be a great niche. No one else is doing that, right? Brandi, what are your thoughts on that as someone that organizes people's lives on a regular basis?
It could be some benefit. Typically when, people get their homes inspected, they're all set for at least a few years. Maybe if things start going south, I might not want another visit for another 10 years or so.
Well, maybe you come out and you change the battery in the smoke alarms.
Oh, okay. So you're talking like a hand,
like a preventive aspect of it.
I got you.
If that water tank maybe is rusty and leaking, if I don't know it until it causes damage, but if now I have you coming here twice a year, once a year, that might be a nice little thing.
Yeah.
And or it gives them an opportunity to save up for a future repair if they know it's
right. That it's coming. It's kind of like getting your car fixed and knowing, hey, I got like 50,000 miles left on these tires.
Right.
So just something to think about.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, well, awesome. Who's your perfect client? Is it a buyer? Is it a seller? Is it both, just depending on their need?
I don't know if there's such a thing as a perfect client. Generally, most of them are going to be buyers. There's kind of if you're a seller and you're with a realtor, sometimes they don't want to know what's wrong, and they want that burden to be put on the buyer, so to speak, because
They don't want to pay for it.
well,
Right.
once there's an issue, then there has to be some kind of action. Either they have to disclose it. If that buyer doesn't buy it to the next buyer, they have to say this, and this is wrong, or they have to bite the bullet and repair it. And then, even then, I'm not sure. They might still have to disclose it. But let's just say the furnace was going, and this buyer backed out, and then the next buyer came in. They would either have to tell the new buyer it's bad, or indicate to them we've replaced the furnace. So, and that's just an example. But I mean, it could be one of 100 things like that. And I just think, if you at least disclose it and everything's up front, then that buyer can decide, negotiate on the price, or and that's generally what an inspection is. Usually the seller and the agent's got a number in mind, and then the buyer and their agent, I shouldn't say nobody, almost never does anybody pay the list price. They always figure there's going to be a little bit of wiggle room in there. And the inspection is usually the key factor, determining factor in that. And then on the other hand, there are some people that, no offense, Brian, are like you and have no knowledge of.
Oh yeah, I own it. That's why I know you.
Yeah.
So when I need to get a home inspection, I call that guy, and he took care of me.
Right. So
Which
they might
is allowing me not to buy that house. So thank you.
Yeah, they may not even know, and so there's that aspect too. But I think it's benefit for both the buyer and the seller. Now,
No, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. You mentioned the word burden, and I think that kind of leads us into our next topic that I want to dive into. First off, thanks so much for diving in and kind of giving us a snippet of what that looks like at the end of the day. So with that being said, look, if anyone wants to reach out to Jim, feel free. Jim, what's the phone number they could reach you at?
419-345-0187.
Perfect, 0187. You can also go online at OMI, as in Oh Monkey Idiots. That's all I got. Couldn't think of anything else. I could have went with Ohio, Michigan Inspections. Not sure why I didn't. So let's go with that. OMI, you can reach Mr. Solon. He can take care of your needs. So
Absolutely.
Talking about burden. So I know we don't like to get into the politics here, but I have to, Randy. Okay? And Jim, I know, I apologize in advance, my friend. With that being said, I saw this post today, and it made me angry. So at the end of the day, I think if people are going to, promote, right, and they're going to campaign, I think campaign needs to be clean. It does not need to be slinging at back and forth. Let's be honest, both sides, Republican, Dems, they're both have individuals that are not respected, right, are not humble, no integrity, but there's also folks in those parties that are awesome, right? It is what it is. But here is something that I saw that really irritated me. The Trump ad that shows fires and looting with the tagline, "You won't be safe in Biden's America." Have you seen that? Have you seen that ad that Trump is doing? So
I've seen one. I don't know if that's.
It's a little sad. That makes me extremely sad. But here is the kicker. It's actual footage during Trump's America.
Right. To be honest with you, Brian, I'm kind of tuned out of everything that's going on in the world for the last 3 weeks, because I'm like you. It's just
there's so much.
maddening.
Brandi said it best a few weeks ago. What is it, Brandi? A recession, unemployment, a pandemic, a continuation of racial discrimination.
Right. It's all negative.
And then the death of Regis Philbin. I mean, like, what? What is going on?
Yeah. Well,
John Travolta's wife.
We lost Elijah Cummings, and we lost some really big giants in civil rights movement right in the middle of a civil rights time, in which we would typically support them, or we would look to them for support. So I think, I think at this point, there really isn't a perfect candidate. I mean, there never really is in the first place. But let's be clear. We already know Trump's track record just based upon what he's done in his presidency. We don't need to go into his filing bankruptcy. We don't need to go into
college
sexual allegations. We don't need to go into college. We don't even need to go into his niece's book. Okay, we can put all of that on the side and address that at another time. We know what he's done in terms of his presidency. Biden, at the same time, we know what he's done in terms of another administration, right? And times before. We know there's enough with the Anita Hill case that throws a lot of red flags and has at least, I would say, a large percentage of women kind of anti-Biden. So we don't have a good candidate. But I think it's imperative that people look at what we have and we look at where we are right now in our time. Do we want someone that can rally the troops and put a better plan in place, and has some experience in government with doing that? Or do we want a person that is full of fear mongering? And I think that there's some fear mongering on both ends, because at this point we're doomed. We're doomed with both choices. But I think for me, I think this election is a no-brainer. But of course, it would be a no-brainer for me, and it would be a no-brainer, I would assume, for most Americans. But of course, that won't be the case. There will be a large percentage of people that will vote against what I am choosing to vote.
I have no faith. I mean, this is the gentleman that won after stating about grabbing women's genitalia.
Yeah.
It was as blunt as possible. At least he owns his, right? So the people that believe in that, and I think you both know, and I think anyone that I engage with, I'm not a religious person, I'm a spiritual person, and I think Donald Trump's actions are making religion sad at this point, because he's bringing God into his choices, which I believe is not the God that I know. So.
Well, I don't think he's bringing God into his choices at all. I think he's pandering to a certain group of people,
Okay, so I think corrected. I would agree with that.
And I think that that's something that all politicians do, right? The difference with this particular president is there is no evidence outside of when he's using that particular rhetoric for that particular group. There's no evidence of him being any sort of Christian outside of that, even at the National Prayer Breakfast, his conversation there is not even spiritually sound or led, because there's a lot of awkwardness that comes when he starts to talk about Christianity and the scripture and all that other stuff. So he's pandering. It is what it is. And I think a large part of the evangelicals have already decided that he is no longer their candidate of choice, just based upon the photo op recently. I think
Kanye West gave up on him. Kanye West. When Kanye doesn't agree with you, there's something wrong.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't put a lot of stock into Kanye either, because he's a person that's a bipolar, a manic depressant, and has bipolar disorder, who is untreated, right? Mental illness is an issue. And this goes back to Donald Trump, because I think there are some clear mental health issues there. I think that the world can see that, right? So you don't have to be a Trump supporter or anti in order to see that there's some cognitive issues going on with him, just in the way he communicates and the shaking, there's something going on there. And I think with Kanye, that particular thing, because now he's come up with his own campaign.
But he's out. He's out. He pulled out last week.
He had to, because you can't start late and then be too late to actually qualify to run in most of the states. But he's got his own set of issues, right? So, I can't hang my hat on that or hopes on even on his support. I think at this point, our only choice is Biden. That's the only choice we have at this point. Now, I will say he was not the candidate I chose originally, but certainly when it came to the primary,
he's what's left.
He's what's left.
Yeah. Well, I think if anybody can't say this, then that's not a fair statement. I will say this. Without a shadow of a doubt, we need a politician running the United States. We need a leader running the United States. An actor, a nobody, it didn't work, right? It just didn't work. It could have worked if there had been some compassion. I think as the leader of our country, my expectations was to him to be more compassionate, more, and I didn't get that, unfortunately, as a leader. I think we're in it for another 4 years with him. I think the people that love him are going to be showing up, and I think the people that don't love him are going to say, I voted last time, it didn't matter. Well, he won by popular vote. So I'm hoping that they're going to educate themselves in the next 12 weeks, plus or minus.
But that's hard to even say, because we have such large numbers and such large municipalities with voter suppression issues. Atlanta, we're not talking about a podunk town here. We're talking about a large city with a large minority population who could not vote during the primaries, who showed up to vote and the machines didn't work. So then they had to move to paper ballots. And have we not had enough of Florida's chaos to tell us that, things happen, right? And so if we have these voter suppression issues, I think we're going to have folks that are going to show up. But when it comes down and counting those numbers are going to magically disappear, or people are going to show up to vote and be unable to vote, right? So I think that the most important thing to do now is we have to look to our election board or our boards of election in our local communities to ensure that they're doing what they can to ensure that we can vote when time comes. Now, I was one of the people that go and early vote. I early voted way back in March. So it's been off my plate for a while, but just thinking back to a lot of folks that I know just in my community that had not even considered voting ahead of time, or weren't considering voting once things open back up here. So I think it's gonna take us all some time to educate ourselves to ensure that we have what we need in order to go and vote, even if it's in areas where there hasn't been any known issues. If there are known issues, you have to reach out to the local board of elections and make sure that they're aware of that. But there are so many suppression issues. I'm concerned. I don't have faith at all in this election, and I unfortunately do believe that Trump is going to win again.
I'm with you. I'm with you. What about you, James? Do you desire to throw your comments or words into this mix?
It's it'd be interesting if there was a third candidate.
A libertarian, at least.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. There's wrong on both sides, I guess. I think, like I said, I've kind of tuned out the last few weeks. I think the media does such a job to get us all riled up and twist things around and use certain language So I think it's easy to form negative opinions. Maybe I don't think we get the whole truth. I don't think we hear it all. But you know, I know both parties are a mess as far as I'm concerned. I think as Americans that if we want to get behind something, I think we could all agree on two things: term limitations and mandatory retirement age of all the people in the House and Senate. I think that's the only way we get around this. I don't necessarily think that the guy who, POTUS, the president, the top dog is the problem, because we can change them every 4 years. I mean, we've got these politicians that have been in there 30, 40, 50 years.
That are put in by the presidents, though. I mean, that's the kicker, is that they're put in by the presidents.
No, they're elected by the people. But once they've been in there for a while, I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to think that, I won't use anybody specifically, but take any politician you can think of that it's been there for 30 years or more. I don't think it's a stretch to think that they owe somebody a favor, if nothing else, somewhere along the line.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is Mitch McConnell has to go. That's what you're ultimately saying.
I think Mitch and any of those guys.
Yeah, I agree.
I think, like, on a board of directors where you have to be away for like 3 years or a term, I think that's how it should be in politics as well. Is that you need to take a step back.
We call that a non-compete clause. Yeah, I mean, these guys, how many of these guys are millionaires that are in there to begin with, and then after they do leave, they end up being consultants for corporations that are looking for an inside track, making hundreds of thousands of dollars that way. So
absolutely.
It's a mess, and I don't know what the right answer is.
Getting rid of the Electoral College would do a lot too.
Yeah, I can't wrap my head around that, because that is, if you figure there's basically, I can't remember, I don't want to call it a meme, but it was something like that. If you were to do that, basically the representation of New York and California could determine the election, just those two segments. So the people in Utah or the less populous states don't have an equal voice, if you will. And that's kind of, I believe.
But are we looking at the whole United States, not really hitting the individual states? I mean, I understand the electoral votes, but I kind of am popular demand aspect. I don't think that you should rationalize that as a whole. Just my opinion, I guess. I don't know how to make it better. I can offer all these opinions. I don't know how to fix it.
I mean, outside of just the number of votes you get in New York and California from the Electoral College, I mean, you have more than enough with just the head count in those places. So I think that if we leave it to popular vote, we leave it to just tallying who voted, that would be more than enough, instead of relying on someone that has been paid off by a lobbyist, or promised a seat someplace, or promise something on the back end. You know what I'm saying? And I think eliminating that as an issue, we would totally be we wouldn't be in this situation with this particular president. However, I can say this: I was not a Hillary fan either. So, and I didn't vote for Hillary. I certainly didn't vote for Trump, though. I don't think that would have been a better issue for us, or a better situation for us. I'm not confident, I should say. So I think that if we simply just go by popular vote and leave it at that, I mean, we would have a much better chance. I certainly support the term limit. That we really do need to implement some term limits, especially when it comes to people like Mitch McConnell, who are just leaving things on a desk and won't bring things to the floor to even vote on. Now, if we're all supposed to have a voice here, and my representative is there to vote for the things that matter for me, and a person won't bring very serious issues to the floor, that's a big problem.
Right, but I mean, keep in mind that the Republican Party isn't the one who's only used this tactic. It's just a tactic. Both sides have used it. But I mean, they use it to move their own agenda or move the party's agenda. It's not.
What happened about for the people? I think the political parties as a whole need to be revamped. I mean, this is about being for the people. It's not about having a Republican or having a Democrat. It's about having that person that's going to cover both sides, because I believe we need to be a little bit more a lot more conservative with our finances, but I also think we need to be a little bit more giving in our policies.
Right. And maybe, and this has been a topic for years, and a third party. I mean, some people would argue, well, that's just going to split the vote. Yeah, maybe, but at least you'd like to think you'd be able to get 2 out of the 3 to come to, be able to negotiate between at least two of the fractions. Right now, it seems like for the last however many cycles there's been, whoever controlled the House and whoever was in the White House, that was the agenda, and they did, what she's talking about, just leave stuff on the table, and we're not going to vote on that today or whatever. But I mean, it doesn't matter which party or which.
Oh, absolutely. They're both corrupted in their own individual.
Yeah,
the third party, I was encouraged I would say I'm a libertarian. I was highly encouraged seeing the numbers from the Green Party during the last election. I highly encouraged. The numbers were so high, which proved to me there is certainly a need for a third party, maybe even a fourth and fifth, but for sure a third party. Seeing how people can rally and get behind an ideal that is not necessarily what's been done before, and just talking common sense, that makes a lot more difference, and makes I feel like that would be a redeeming party for us, especially this group or this subsect of folks I'm in with millennials. We don't typically believe one way or the other. Like we're not Republicans, we're not really even Democrats. Most, I should say, millennials. We're somewhere, and I think most of America is somewhere in the middle. We're just being forced to pick 2 very poor choices, because it's primarily based upon who's gotten the least, good enough or one way or the other. So having the third party, Johnson, I thought was a great candidate back for the last election, and I would have liked to have seen him go further. I think a Green Party and strengthening the Green Party, and I'm not talking about strengthening the Green Party with Bernie Sanders, because I don't think Bernie's a libertarian at all. That's not his group at all. I think that if we get someone like a Gary Johnson I thought that had a little bit more common sense policies, if we start to see candidates like that, I think that would strengthen that party, and that would bring out more voters.
I would agree with that. Well, that kind of took a little bit of a turn that I wasn't expecting. So hopefully you guys got some great information on there. I think at the end of the day, basically what we're saying is educate yourself and then make an informed decision, right? As long as it's not Trump. At the end of the day, it has to be best for you. I think this is probably, Jim, you might have a different opinion on this. I think this is Donald Trump. There isn't anybody that is going to decide to go with him in the next 12 weeks. They either are going with him or they're not. And I don't really remember any other president that was that kind of cut and dry. James, any other president out there that was that cut and dry? Walking in, they knew?
Not that I can think of offhand. I would think that the majority of the voters, I think we could have the election next week and it wouldn't matter.
Yeah. I don't think anyone's waiting for any other information. I think you said it best, Brandi. He's done a term. We know what his presidency looks like. I think folks already know who they're voting for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of curious how they came up with the Democrats chose Biden. I mean, I know this was a whittling process down to that, but there has
to be somebody else.
Yeah.
Like somebody.
Well, they were going for who could win, and regardless to what we think about the other candidates,
right?
He's extremely polarizing, right? He's gonna get people on board or not, and I think that because of the relationship that America built with him during the Obama administration, that kind of lended him much more grace than we would typically give, especially based upon his voting record alone. So I think that they were just going straight for who can beat Trump, not who's the best candidate, not who's even the best diplomat. Like I think it's a matter of who could take Trump and give Trump a run for his money. I think Biden has the best chance out of everyone, honestly. But I particularly, I don't think that there was enough solid candidates. I think that if they would have put a few candidates together and made a baby, we could have gotten some really, really great people. Maybe Kamala Harris and hey, maybe even Biden. I was a Yang fan because what he was saying made more sense. I think that one of the things that tripped Yang up was the fact that he was just talking about free money, which alienated the voting, especially the conservative voters. But I think there was much more there. Bernie Sanders, there was no way he would have been able to beat Trump. Just no way. So I think that was primarily what their goal was. I think they shot themselves in the foot, but that was a choice that was made. They had to make it, and so here we are. But
I believe we haven't seen the worst. I believe 2 weeks before election that a smear campaign will be full on from the Trump administration. I think we're going to hear secrets that we didn't know, and I think he's going to pull like what he did, the campaign, not him specifically, but I think they're going to do what they did with Hillary, because that is what killed her, in my opinion. I believe that if that email blast push hadn't been orchestrated, that we'd be in a different situation, which leads me to our last conversation on orchestration and how things are played out on timing, which is just absolutely crazy. I've been watching a little bit more conspiracy theory shows, and has really got my mind wondering and thinking, wow, that could really be the truth here. So it's crazy. With that being said, I do want to kind of wrap up this subject. And Brandi, why don't you tell us about the business world? Are you finding more consulting? Are people trying to kind of need more services as they get back into America kind of reopening with schools? And I just heard that daycare starting next week are going to be full on. Are you finding more businesses needing some more of your services across the board?
So I would say a lot of what I have been doing, which has been positive, it has been more consulting. I think as many companies start to look further and further dissect their departments or their diversity groups, they're starting to see, I guess, gaps in their own processes. And so I think, companies are jumping on that and trying to make differences. So I would say the bulk of the new business that I'm getting is more consulting. I was on a panel this past weekend with the Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Northwest Ohio, on just talking to kids about how to address and how do we address the race conversation personally and also those 18-year-olds and that are going into college, and even some of the younger ones that are going into high school? How do you talk about race, and how do you kind of talk about diversity? So I would say a lot of my work has primarily been in that space, though I'm still getting, the administrative tasks and things like that. So.
Okay. That keeps you busy, for sure. Well, we appreciate you popping in with us this week, Jim, to be able to hang out with us. We have a special guest next week, Brandi. Are you ready to hear who it is?
Who is it?
Drum roll, please. It is Miss Laura Gerken. Now, you probably know that name because her dad is a Democrat here in good old Toledo, Ohio. So, funny story about Laura. I worked with Laura when she was like 16 years old. I was a manager of Bob Evans, and she worked with me. So to be able to see her progress through this, are you familiar with her work at all, Brandi?
No, I'm not.
James, are you familiar with her work at all? So she's an activist in every which way. You might have remembered seeing her a few months back when Trump came here, and she got punched in the eye.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. That would be Laura Gerken. So she has a voice, so I'm really excited to kind of hear what she has to say and where she sees the United States going. So I think it'll be a great conversation, just as engaging as today's was with James. So last point, James, give us your phone number in case we want to touch base with you. And we need that inspection twice a year. I think we need to talk about how we can incorporate that for you.
That's right. OMI Inspections, Ohio, Michigan, LLC, area code 419-345-0187.
Perfect. How far down do you go to Ohio, and how far up do you go to Michigan, my friend?
Generally speaking, we're up in the Bedford, Temperance, maybe Monroe area, and probably Bowling Green would be as far south as I would go.
Perfect. If you do question it, though, give him a call. Look, I can't even bit my pinky. Give him a call. He'll call you back. So, Brandi, any last words for you? Are you doing any specials with Tax Rat? Anything going on with that we need to talk about?
We're doing specials for all small businesses right now through COVID, just depending on the service. So if you need support, call 419-664-0500 or go to the taxratconcierge.com or brandysurratt.com.
Perfect. And last but not least, I know you sit on the board with the Y. How are they doing? How's this transition for them? Because I'm sure it's life-changing.
Yep. So we've definitely been in transition at the YMCA. We are, the Wayman D. Palmer YMCA was huge with providing food and cleaning supplies to the community since the COVID outbreak. And so we're pivoting and kind of shifting back into opening all of the locations. So, for sure, we are taking donations. So if you're interested in donating, go to the YMCAToledo.com and choose the Wayman D. Palmer YMCA for your donations.
Perfect. Well, again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. James, as always, it's been a pleasure. I love chatting with you. I think our last conversation, we started talking about drones, which was a very intense conversation and lots of research. Brandi, as always, it's a pleasure. I look forward to seeing what you're going to look like and the words that are going to come out of your mouth. So thank you for entertaining us. Thank you for staying in with us, and we'll catch everyone next week. Be safe. Hugs and high fives, guys.
Take care. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.